Hey everybody, it's Jace from Collision Hub. Welcome back to this latest Collision Hub webinar. Today we're going to be talking about steering column inspections, controversy, and published inaccuracies. Something that we've noticed for the past several months regarding steering column inspections and some of the required replacement parts that are out there. So we're going to talk today about some of the OEM information that's out there, some varying requirements from vehicle makers, including mandatory replacement. Some vehicle makers require inspection, following anti-collision, following an airbag deployment. So some varied requirements out there from the industry. But we want to bring to your attention some of the issues that we've seen most recently around some of these inspection requirements and have a call to action for you towards the end of today, because again, this is a serious issue because the steering columns have collision energy management built into them. And certainly sometimes it makes sense to inspect them or replace them, but other times we're not so sure. And again, we've noticed some inaccuracies, some issues that we got out there. So again, I mentioned this title of this presentation today is Steering Column Inspections, Controversy, and Published Inaccuracies. But perhaps a better title for this could have been The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Okay, so let's start with the good first and foremost, because it's always, again, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? So I'm going to start with the good. The good is the Mike Anderson survey. So we're going to go through and take you through a couple of different years here around the Mike Anderson survey. So in 2016, either all the time or most of the time, we had a response rate of 48.2% of the respondents said that they use OEM repair procedures at the time of writing estimate, either all of the time or most of the time. And that was up from 16.3 and 26.4% respectively. So again, kind of trending in the right direction. The following year, the Who Pays for What survey in 2018, sorry, two years later, 2018, that the always or mostly jumped up to 54.2%. So still not really where we want to be. We like to be at 100%. Recognize that that's probably an unrealistic goal, but nonetheless, we would love to have 100% coverage when it comes to OEM procedures for all those estimates and all of our repair planning that we're putting. But 54.2% is definitely a trend in the right direction. So if we look at them comparatively, 2015 to 2018, always jumped from 16.3 up to 17.7 and 21.5% of the time of respondents. The most went from 26.4 to 30.5 to 32.7. So cumulatively from 2015, where we had a 42.7% response that we were either always or mostly using OEM repair procedures to write that estimate, we've jumped up to 54.2%. So again, we're heading in the right direction. That's a positive trend, and bear with me because I want to set the groundwork for this OEM procedures and kind of point where towards the end of the presentation about why it's an issue if we don't get some of these things corrected. Okay, so again, we're moving this positive direction through survey response that we've got, so actual good data from the Mike Anderson survey. We're also starting to see a lot of anecdotal evidence that points to technicians and collision repair professionals following OEM procedures, doing the right thing. Collision Repair Technicians United, for example, you can see there's a vehicle there that's been full body section, procedure that isn't really been a safe repair for many, many years. And some may argue that it maybe never has been a safe repair, but nonetheless, I think it's widely recognized today that full body sectioning or clipping simply is not acceptable. Now, when this picture was first posted a few years ago, I would say that there's a decent percentage, maybe even the majority of responses to the post on Collision Repair Technicians United said that, hey, you know what, as long as you do it good, if you're a real body man, one of those 30-year body men, that if you're a good technician, it can be a good repair, it can save a total vehicle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I think that was the majority of the responses. Now, if we shift to 2020, if somebody was to post something like that, the bulk of the responses would be, this is an unacceptable repair. Those real body men that were touting this as a good repair have kind of either gone away, stay off of social media, or maybe through education and sharing of information, we've kind of changed the way they think about things. Maybe we've opened their eyes a little bit to poor repairs. Additionally, you can see here we've got on the right-hand side here a post that was around steering column inspections where 4 of the 6 that they inspected failed. Now, not all those are frontal impacts. Some of those were side and even a rear impact, I believe, where we had some shearing of some of the pieces in there. But nonetheless, we have people that are advocating for following OEM procedures, and we've got this anecdotal evidence that says steering column inspection, steering column replacement are things that need to be done, and people are getting that. So that's good. So again, we're following OEM information and moving in a positive direction. So let's talk about some of those OEM procedures that are out there and see what some vehicle makers say. Now, the first example I've got here is from a 2018 Subaru Impreza, where it says in a frontal collision where the driver airbag module assembly has been activated, I'll replace the following parts with new ones: steering column, and then the steering assembly, the steering column assembly. So again, makes sense, right? We've got a frontal collision, we've got an airbag deployment, we've got the collision energy of that occupant moving forward. Makes sense that we may have some collapse that's built into that collision energy management steering column. So that makes sense. So Subaru followed it up, because there were some questions about, well, do I have to do it following every collision, and what is a collision, etc. And at SEMA last year, so November of 2019, Subaru came on the stage at the SCRS event and said that inspections are truly required after every collision, which again made sense. They're investigating it. However, what they've done since then is they've clarified that position to really say what a collision truly is, and I think this is really important verbiage that they've got around it. That's anything that is outside of minor cosmetic damage or exterior panel damage. So again, if you've got damage that gets into the structure, now that's considered a collision, whereas it's just a scrape in a bumper cover or a fender, although it may have been caused by a collision, they're not considering that collision damage. Therefore, these inspections, there's a little bit more room in there. But again, for any collision, and again, as Subaru defines it as, again, that damage that exceeds minor sheet metal damage when it gets into that structure or some structural parts on it, that is inspection. That is when we need to do these inspections. That's when we need to replace these steering columns. Okay. Now, another vehicle maker that requires some steering column replacement in a frontal collision is Fiat Chrysler. Now, I've got an example here. This is a 2016, I believe, Dodge Charger. The inspection for this says, or the requirements, it says, if the vehicle is involved in a front end collision or the airbag is deployed or both, the steering column must be replaced. So again, they're not using verbiage like Subaru's now using that explains what exactly a front end collision is. They're just saying if it's involved in a front end collision of any sort, or if the airbag deployed, or both, steering column requirement is mandatory. Now, it's a little bit difficult to see from this picture, but you can see here we've got a left front lower hit on this. The headlamp itself, like from the pictures I've seen anyways, looks relatively unscathed. We got a little bit of bumper damage and some cosmetic damage behind the bumper, but nothing in the structure. Three-dimensional measurements were accurate in this vehicle, so very minimal damage. However, because of the statement here, we have a mandatory steering column replacement. Now, that might make sense off the get-go because, again, the vehicle's been involved in a collision. But if I told you that this accident was caused by a raccoon, would you still feel that way? So again, this vehicle that hit a raccoon, I don't know how fast the vehicle is going, but because of this raccoon damage, we now had to put a steering column into this Dodge Charger. And I don't know that that makes a lot of sense. I think instances like this is where we start to get that tension between the collision repair, the insurer, the customer, because what is really the right thing to do on this? Now, if I go by the book, it's telling you I need to put a steering column in there. If you think about it more practically or logically, one might say, maybe it doesn't make sense to put a steering column in. However, if we don't put a steering column in and God forbid something happens, what's going to happen to our responsibility as a collision repair with that column? Well, why didn't you put the column back in? Well, I didn't think it was necessary. Probably isn't going to fly. Whereas putting the column in there because the vehicle maker says that it needs to be put in there makes a little bit more sense. Now, we reached out to Fiat Chrysler on this and asked for some clarification on what exactly a collision is. or can we do some inspections in the event of a more minor collision? The answer from Fiat Chrysler was essentially nope. As of right now, frontal collision requires the steering column to be replaced. So we'll continue to follow up with them, share that Subaru verbiage with them. Maybe they'll make a change to it in the future. But again, something that we just wanted to make you aware of, because again, there is some issue and there's some controversy around that. So another vehicle manufacturer that requires steering column inspection is General Motors. So here I've got a 2016 Chevrolet Silverado, and it says after any collision, inspect the following components: the steering column. Now, the nice thing that General Motors has, they've got some good information on what they want to see done with that steering column. They've got a number of different measurements that you can make for the steering column inspection. They've got great images of where to inspect the vehicle for damage. And if you think back to that social media post that I shared a little while ago, those columns that weren't involved in a frontal collision, it was because those pins have been kind of sheared or damaged, and that's why those were required. But again, that's inspection information from General Motors. Now, here's where we first started getting into one of our issues. Okay. Or another one of our issues, I should say, because the Fiat Chrysler example is an issue as well, I think. But this was through a Collision Hub Pick-a-Tech exchange. Pick-a-Tech, for those of you that don't know, is our texting service that we use with our collision repair shops out there across the country, that when they've got an issue with a particular technical procedure, if they've got repair replace decisions, if they've got difficulty interpreting a vehicle manufacturer website, if they're looking for clarification on a procedure, etc., estimate writing, everything through post-repair inspection, they can text us a picture of the issue. They can text us a message saying, hey, I've got this particular vehicle. Here's my issue. They can send us video links. We can send them video links back and forth. We've done some live chats, etc. Anyways, nonetheless, this started with a Pick-a-Tech exchange with our friend Kyle on a General Motors, on a Silverado or Sierra, I'm not sure which one, Silverado or Sierra steering column, where Kyle said, hey, I've got this measurement of 273 millimeters on this steering column. According to the GM, the spec is collapsed and needs to be replaced. So again, the spec, I'm sorry, so here's a picture of the column, a little bit closer picture of the column, with showing that 273 millimeter length of this column. I said, you're at 273, what's the spec? He sent me the illustration. It says it's at 286 millimeters is the specification for this. I said, got it. Looks to be short. Problem solved, right? Not so fast, my friend. But he did go on to say there is no evidence of the tabs or plastic injection of shearing, much again like those Facebook posts where the 4 columns were replaced. Could GM have the wrong measurement for the manual tilt and telescoping column? Now, this is back in late December of last year. To this point, I hadn't heard anything about any GM issues. I did let him know that, hey, it's possible. We've seen a number of issues lately with columns, but nothing with General Motors vehicles that I'm aware of. And then he asked me if I could reach out to GM for clarification. He said, I think a new column is for sure in order, given the measurement versus what was said in the body repair manual. And I said, yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Now, just a quick aside here, when I mentioned here on my December 27th post, it's possible we've seen a number of issues lately with columns, but nothing from GM. That was in reference to, I believe it was a Nissan Versa that was hitting the right rear quarter panel. But again, the inspection requirements from Nissan for that particular vehicle said, inspect the column. So this collision repair facility inspected the column, found that the column was short, order a replacement column. The replacement column measured the exact same length as the original column. So I don't know how long this went back and forth. There was an exchange, I think. I got rid of, sent that column back, maybe got another column, same thing, same measurement. And ultimately, I believe they ended up putting the original column back in, but now we've got staff time involved. We've got parts distribution time involved. We had to bring in Nissan on top of that to get some clarification on it, which Nissan said they recognized that the column was the same, and that the published information was likely from a pre-release and an engineering specification that got changed somewhere along the way. and that they are hoping that eventually that would get solved. No confirmation that it would get solved, but that they are hopeful of it. Now, that scares me a little bit because we don't know if that's going to happen or when that's going to happen, but it's become an issue. And again, we'll keep emphasizing, keep coming back to it, but we need these vehicle manufacturers to have good technical information in their manuals, or we're going to start heading down the wrong path. Again, we talked about that positive trend of following OEM information. If we have bad information, then we're going to get a situation where we may not start following it. So, okay, back to our Sierra here. So we order a replacement column for this vehicle. You can see not an inexpensive part on this. So we got the replacement column in, and we measure the column, and the new column measured 278 millimeters, 8 millimeters under the required 286 millimeters. So now we have a problem. The original one was 273 on the damaged vehicle. The replacement column measured 278, and the specification is 286 millimeters. So I reached back out to General Motors to try to get some information on what we should do on this particular vehicle. Kyle reached back out to me and said, "Hey, any news from GM on those columns?" I said, "No, nothing yet. I'll reach out to them in the morning, see if they respond." I didn't hear back from them, but we'll see if we can escalate it and get an answer for this. And he mentioned that the customer was asking if we had any information. So again, now we've got a repair. We've got a vehicle that's now sitting in the shop waiting on an answer on this column. So this did go back and forth a few times. We had Kyle reach back out to me and said, "You know what, the customer is waiting for their vehicle. Their rental day is about to expire, so now they're going to be out of pocket for rental expenses because we're not able to give them an answer for the steering column." So now we've got this issue that we've got is starting to grow exponentially on our hands here. So what should we be doing in this situation? So again, we reached back out to General Motors. And kind of here's a few bullet points in the lengthy email that we sent to General Motors in early January. I want to just cover a few points. We're discovering the measurements in the OEM procedures across a variety of manufacturers is wrong. Most frequently it's been Nissan, Subaru, GM, and Fiat Chrysler. The Fiat Chrysler one again is not a measurement issue, but a replacement issue. So again, you can see we've taken a little bit of this out of context. The shops today are measuring as part of the post-collision checks, finding a measurement issue, ordering the OEM replacement part, and performing a secondary set of comparative measurements where, again, as you saw, we are either getting the same measurement as a damaged vehicle or a measurement that is shorter than the specification. And for what it's worth on these GM, these Silverado and Sierras, we're starting to see a lot more of these where I'm getting calls on a semi-regular basis now saying, "Hey, I ran into it on this Silverado or the Sierra. It's not just it's the heavy duty trucks, it's the 1500 trucks." So it's across the board where we've got this misinformation in here. So questions that we want to know from General Motors: should we replace this with the new OEM column regardless of the new measurement? Or should we put the original one back in? If it measures the same, should we put that back in? Or should we put the replacement part in because that's what was sent to us? Now, I think the best thing for us to do is probably put that new column in because now we can say we've got the documentation that says, "Hey, we measured it. It was short. We're a replacement column. We put the new column in. We put the old column back in that measures short against the specification." Now, again, if I'm being called to task on it, again, why did I do that? Well, it measured the same as the replacement column. Probably isn't going to be an answer that's going to fly as well. So again, we're looking for information on that. We really need to fix this. Question that we also asked General Motors: if the measurements if we measure and return each time for having to perform it, what are the ramifications of the dealership parts department? So again, it's no longer just the collision repair facility, the insurer, and the customer. Now we're bringing in the dealership, the parts operation, the entire General Motors supply chain to a certain extent. And then one thing that we've done now with General Motors and others is we volunteered our time to go to and meet with an OEM to a distribution center and make some measurements with our friends from Matrix One so we can pull columns, measure it, chart that out, write all these specifications down, compare that to the service information, and then share that with the industry that, hey, these are known good columns. We've got some issues here, vehicle maker, OEM 1, 2, 3, can we get this fixed? and try to proactively work through this with the vehicle manufacturer, because we want to see this right. Okay. So we think it's important, and we recognize that the OEMs recognize it's important as well. And again, we're continuing to work with General Motors on this issue. We'll continue to work with Fiat Chrysler, continue to work with Nissan on it. Subaru, they're good, right? They've got the clarification on what a collision is. That's a step in the right direction. So they recognize an issue. They have fixed that issue, which kudos to Subaru. Thank you for doing that. We still got some work to do with GM and FCA and Nissan. And again, I'm optimistic that we'll get there. It's just that we want to keep working through that. So hopefully we'll have an update for you at some point in the not too distant future, but we continue to work through that. Okay, so now let's get to the ugly. Okay, the ugly is really the unintended consequences of this issue. The first one is the increased cost in the overall equation, right? So again, we've already talked about, we've got that order replacement part, get the replacement part, ship the replacement part. So not only do we have the parts cost issue, if I've got again that column, that the OEM column that measures the damaged vehicle column that measures the exact same as the replacement column, I've got an expense in that cost of that, versus if I measure it and it's that specification, I don't need to buy another part, right? We've also got the labor time, and I think the labor time is, again, not something that we really need to think about, because again, it's not just the repair facility that's having to pull that column, measure the column, install a new column, call an order replacement column, measure the replacement column, on and on and on and on. We've also got that parts distribution. So every time that they have to send somebody to go pick that part, prepare that part, ship that part, deliver that part, come pick up the part, bring it back, check it back into inventory. It's a cumbersome process. So it's something that the OEMs need to be aware of, that their distribution centers, it's going to be an issue for them as well. I think it also, as I mentioned, adds to that insurer repair tension. We've already got many situations where we've got disagreements between the two parties. And this one certainly is just going to add more fuel to that fire. If I keep measuring columns that are short only to get a replacement column that's also short, I think we're going to get to a point where they're going to go like, why are you wasting your time? Why are you doing this? It's just going to add more attention to it. It's going to add to that cycle time of that repair, and ultimately it's going to take it longer for the customers to get their keys back. We've promised them a quality repair. We want to be as efficient as we possibly can while getting their vehicle repaired properly. And if we've got, again, in the situation of that Dodge Charger, or I'm sorry, in that Sierra, where we got the customer now being out of rental car days, we're adding additional stress to our customer. And ultimately what that's going to lead to is a reduced customer satisfaction. They're going to lose confidence in us, that we know what we're actually doing, repairing their vehicles. And if you guys can't get this right, how can I be comfortable that the rest of my repairs are going to be done properly? How can I be confident that your welding is going to be quality? How can I be confident that the three-dimensional measurements are going to be accurate, that the steering and suspension is going to be accurate, that the ADAS systems are going to function as properly? If you can't get something as simple as a steering column measurement proper, how can I have any faith in you to do the rest of the repairs properly? So that's a huge issue. And I think where we're going to end up going is, again, those real body men, the ones that have been doing this for 30 years, that know better than the OEM. If we have inaccurate information in the OEM procedures, inaccurate information in the body repair manuals, eventually that technician is going to go like, same thing. If it's not right here, how do I know the rest of the manual is right? And maybe I'll just rely on my own expertise to repair the vehicle properly. They're going to start ignoring those. So again, we had that Mike Anderson survey and that anecdotal information that's saying we've got an upwards positive trend in collision repair professionals following OEM procedures. Now, if we have published information that's inaccurate, what are they going to do? They're going to start to ignore those procedures. And ultimately, what's going to happen? We're going to be putting that consumer, our customers, in harm's way. And that's really where the ugliest part of this is if we aren't doing these things properly because we've got bad information that ultimately it leads to technicians not following OEM procedures, we will be repairing those vehicles improperly, and we will be putting those customers in harm's way. So whether it's your family, my neighbor's family, my friends, my family, whoever it is, that's been in a collision they're counting on us to repair their vehicle properly, we're ultimately putting them in a compromised position if we don't follow those procedures. And we really need to make sure that this is a positive change and we get this addressed and we continue that positive trend of following OEM procedures. So that's my biggest concern really, again, is those consumers that are counting on us to get their vehicle back properly. And we tie ADAS into it and everything else. It frightens me. Again, we've already got a big enough challenge teaching the industry that we need all these things to work together to function properly as designed. If we start having gaps here and there, it's going to lead to disaster. So, in closing, what I really want to do is I want to have a call to action to you to help us escalate this to the vehicle manufacturers. Let them know this is a serious issue and we need their help to resolve it. So, if you run into a situation on a steering column inspection that's short or doesn't make sense, please email me at jason@collisionhub.com. We are going to address this as a topic that we're trying to tackle with our 20 group. We're trying to come up with some standardization. I would love to see vehicle makers adopt the verbiage that Subaru did to clarify what a collision is. I think if Fiat Chrysler, for example, simply adopted that Fiat Chrysler verbiage, I think that the Raccoon Charger wouldn't have had a column put into it. At the same time, we need Nissan and others to give us and GM to have good, accurate measurements on there so that we do measure it and it's short. We know what the replacement column we're going to get is going to be a different measurement. It's going to be the correct measurement. It's going to match us in the service information. So, with that, I thank you for your time and we look forward to seeing you at our next Collision Hub broadcast. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great day.